I asked a question to the universe, which then my cells answered. I asked a question when I just realized and owned I exist as a field energy, a spirit, whatever you want to call it, as information in the field. And I also exist as a body. My first question that came up in my head was, then why have both? Why have a spirit and a body? Why not just be the spirit? And my cells came up with this chorus that I just blasted my head. And it was kind of funny because I think they have Jewish heritage cells, because I asked them a question and they responded in a question. I asked, why have both? And all of a sudden it welled up and the answer came and said, Bruce, if you're just a spirit, what does chocolate taste like? And all of a sudden I said, oh my God, it's the biology, which is all the receptor devices that translate my environment into sensation, which are then translated by the nervous system into fields and vibrational patterns, which are then sent back to my source. And I realized at that moment, I said, my God, we're here to experience this place, to touch it and smell it, watch sunsets and feel love and eat wonderful food and have all this. And I thought, wow. And then all of a sudden I said, yeah, but it's not just receiving information. When you have a body, you can be creative. We can come to this planet and manifest creativity. And we do this, we step into a virtual reality suit called the body. I step into the suit as a spirit. It communicates with me via just the same way the Mars rover is communicating with NASA, and I get to experience this planet.
Need motivation?
Watch a top 10 with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because you are probably the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more, and you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Bruce Lipton, and my take on his top 10 rules for success. Enjoy. Rule number 2, don't be a victim of your genes.
The belief that genes turn on and off is taking power away from the individual, because if the genes were turning on and off and I did not control them, then by definition, I'm a victim of which genes did I get from my family? Did cancer genes come in, heart disease genes, or diabetes? And now we recognize that in regard to disease, genes are responsible for less than 10% of disease. In fact, there are indications that genes are only responsible for 1% of disease. So all of a sudden it says, well, wait, we used to think genes cause disease, but if only a small percent of disease is controlled by genes, and where is the disease coming from that is affecting the world? And the answer is, now we know from epigenetics, consciousness, lifestyle, belief systems. These are the ultimate controls of the gene. We know that if you got a cancer gene and that's what you believe, then you think I'm going to get the cancer. And then you get a cancer and you say the genes did it. And now we know, no, that there is no cancer gene. There is not one gene that causes cancer. Genes are correlated with cancer, meaning if your life is not in harmony and you have one of these genes, you can activate a cancer. 50% of the women that have the same BRCA1 gene never get the cancer. The point is very important. Having the gene doesn't mean you get cancer, but having the gene and not living in harmony, not living in a healthy lifestyle, that causes the cancer. And so we have to help people, take them from the belief I'm a victim and give them the science that no, your consciousness is creating this life experience in here. Your consciousness is controlling your genes.
Rule number 3, learn to channel energy.
Cells in your body are not connected to the outer environment, but they have to adjust themselves to that outer environment. And the relevance about that, well, then how they know what to do, because something has to tell them what the heck is going on. And so it turns out the nervous system interfaces the environment and then sends signals to the cells to tell them what's going on. So the cells are responding to the perceptions and actions of the central nervous system. And I say, why is that relevant? Because I say it's an interpretation. And so the cells, the simple point, you got 50 trillion citizens, and the conscious, the mind is a government.
Yes.
And the government talks to these cells. Now you could have a bad leader who tells them this is all crap, it's all falling apart, things don't work, and it's like they're not going to be happy cells. And it can profoundly different. You talk to your cells and tell them, okay, everything's cool, we're great. When there's a big, incident in the U.S., an accident or big problem in some community, the president goes to the community.
Yes.
Why does the president go? Because it takes the attention of all the other citizens of the states, focuses on the intention where that president is. So if there's an area where there's a disaster, the energy of all the people are addressed to that area because the president shows up there, and that's the leader. So I'm saying the same thing for your cells. You're sort of that president in there. And the point is, when you touch some part on your body, your conscious attention focuses on that part of the body. And intention is energy, and it's a healing energy when you're sending a good message to that part of the body. So you touch it, talk to it, and it sounds like, oh, crazy. I go, no, you are directly sending information via your consciousness to all the cells to focus healing on this part.
Rule number 4, change your thoughts.
If you change the picture in your mind, you change the chemistry, you change the fate. So I'll give an example. If I have a picture of love in my mind, the brain releases complementary chemistry, dopamine, pleasure, oxytocin, bond with your loved one, growth hormone, which does exactly what it says. It enhances your growth. And that's why when people fall in love, the chemistry of the brain going into the blood, the culture medium, enhances vitality. People glow when they fall in love. People are healthy when they fall in love. It's not an accident. It's the chemistry of your culture medium.
Mm-hmm.
But now I say, but wait, what if I have a picture of fear? I go, oh, well, love chemistry doesn't come out when fear is in the picture. The brain releases stress hormones and factors that affect the immune system and growth of the system. And I go, oh, my goodness. I say, why is it relevant? Changing my thought changes my chemistry. The chemistry adjusts my biology. So if I can control my thoughts, I can control the chemistry, and therefore I control the biology. That takes me to empowerment, mastery. After being programmed by medicine and biology all these years that you're just a victim of your genes, that's 100% false. Genes cannot turn on and off by themselves. They're controlled by the signals of the environment, which are then controlled by the brain and the consciousness. Yep. And all of a sudden it says, yeah, but I control those things. I go, yes, you do. And as a result, you have power to heal yourself and create what you want on this planet.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5, fake it till you make it.
In today's world, I love the phrase because it is funny, but it's true. Fake it till you make it. Meaning, you want to be happy? Well, you have to habituate happy. You have to say every day, no matter if you're not happy, I don't really care. You have to tell yourself, I am happy. I am happy. You have to repeat it. Habituation, repetition. Why? I'm consciously repeating it every day and looking at my life. My life really sucks. Oh, Bruce, I am happy. I'm saying that. I go, well, why are you saying it? Because repetition is how the subconscious mind learns. I say, why is this relevant? And here's the fun part. Because after I've repeated it a number of times, the subconscious says, okay, I am happy. I've learned this. I go, why is it relevant? That 95% of the day, the subconscious function is to make that program real. If my program is I am happy, the function of the mind is to make sure I'm happy. If the program says I'm going to get cancer because I heard that from somebody else, then the function of the mind is to make sure I get cancer because that's the belief I'm working with. And if it says I am a victim and I can't get out of this, then the function of the mind is, yep, look, you see, I'm showing you're a victim and you can't get out of it because I'm running the show. You're a victim.
Rule number 6, develop good habits.
How did you learn anything after age 7? And the answer was repetition. That's what it was. It was just practicing. The more you repeat something, the more it becomes just so easy. You don't know how to play an instrument. You practice like crazy. At some point, you practice so much, you pick up the instrument, no consciousness of the details of how you're playing it. It's so automatic at this point. It's like driving the car. When you first got in the car, it's like, oh my God, you got to watch the window, the mirrors, the gauges, the engine sound. It's like so much. Today, you've been driving a car a long time. Guess what? You don't even think about it. Put the key in, you're thinking about where you're going. And all of a sudden, I saw the more you practice, the less effort it takes to carry out whatever it was you were practicing. Now the question is, what are you practicing? Something positive or something negative? Because they both become programs, whichever one you're practicing.
Rule number 7, think positive.
If I have a picture of fear in my mind, I'm afraid of something, my brain translates fear with different chemicals, stress hormones, cortisol, norepinephrine, factors that affect the immune system that are called cytokines or histamine. So basically, in a state of conscious fear, the brain releases chemistry that complements fear. That chemistry goes into the body's blood, and that changes the behavior and the genetics of the person. So that means there's a difference between having positive thoughts and having negative thoughts. And people say, oh, that positive thinking doesn't really work, but that's not true. The best example of positive thinking in a scientific study is called placebo. You have a disease and the doctor says, here's this new pill and it's the brand new science and it's going to cure you, and you believe it. And you take the pill and you get well. Then you find out the pill was a sugar pill. So then you're left with, so what made me well? It's not the sugar pill. It was the positive belief in that sugar pill and how it's going to help your life. So that's called placebo, positive thinking, positive result. Unfortunately, most people don't recognize a more important point. Negative thinking is equally powerful, but it works in the opposite direction. So it turns out, for example, less than 10% of cancer is even connected to a family lineage. 90% of cancer just comes out of the blue, so to speak. But the reality is no, it's a result of stress and negative thinking. So it's an important point. Positive thinking, negative thinking, equally powerful because that's the level of consciousness that is translated into the chemistry that controls your genetics. I just want to add a very important point to this. Quantum physics is the most valid science on this planet. There is no science that has been tested more and verified more. I go, so what's the relevance? Because the primary principle in quantum physics is consciousness is creating our life experiences. And well, when you add epigenetics to that physics, now we understand the mechanism of how consciousness is controlling our biology. So biology and physics are coming together to reveal that we are very powerful creators of our lives.
Rule number 8, be in love.
I am so grateful to offer this because as each one of us takes back our power and each one of us actually starts to live heaven on earth like you did when you fell in love, even if it was only for a week, if you could do that every day of your life and everyone around you was doing that every day of your life, then the simple truth is this, then earth does become heaven. If we're all living as if it's heaven and the function is to create, the mind is to take that vision and manifest it. If I believe I'm living in heaven, then my world experience will be, what would it be like if I lived in heaven? And being in love is the one time you unconsciously, unknowingly took back power, the equivalent of the red pill. You unknowingly became powerful. And I say, yeah, in 24 hours, you changed your whole demeanor of life after you met this person.
Yeah.
I go, you could have done it in different ways. It didn't have to be with a person. You didn't need to fall in love with a person. You could fall in love with gardening.
Yeah.
If you're a gardener, you go out in the garden and you're digging the garden. You're having so much fun and the plants are growing and everything. I go, you just manifested heaven on earth for you. Isn't that beautiful, living in the garden? I go, well, it doesn't have to be another person. Love doesn't. Love is just focusing on something you desire. A pet, a garden, artwork, cleaning up the garage. Really? You say that could be? I say, yeah, because when I'm doing it, I'm creating order and happiness and all that. And I go, well, fine. Then you're cleaning up the garage. I got to clean up the damn garage. So if you're cleaning up, because, wow, that's so much better now. I feel so much better in here. It's so clean. I know where everything is. I go, being in love doesn't have, it could be anything that keeps your conscious mind in front. Because it's when your conscious mind goes in the back is when you become the product of your subconscious program. So, and this is great.
Rule number 9, manifest in the present moment.
The hardest part about programming that people don't recognize is you have to make all programs present tense positive statements, not future statements. I will have, I shall have, or something like that. It's like, no, I am. It is. And the reason is it's so logically simple, and that is this. Let's say I'm not well. I say, I want to be well. I say, fine, let's record that. Now let's come back a whole year later and push the button that says, I want to be well. I say, oh, it's been a whole year. You never got there. You just wanted to be well for a whole year. That's what the program said. So if you are sick and you write, I am healthy, and the mind looks at the program and says, oh, I got to change this. It doesn't change the program. It brings health back so that the body matches the program. And so that's the whole issue about it. The function of the mind is to take the program and manifest it. And if you got a negative program, then obviously whatever it manifests is going to be negative.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is have fun.
Here we go.
That's
Eagle! Eagle!
yes, master. And then you can look at it. I reckon I'm good on that. Great, I love it. Thank you.
Up and away! Oh, hold on a second. Hold on. Laura!
Welcome to Funkmeister Studios, where all the magic happens.
And in 1925, physicists said that our vision of a universe split into an invisible energy realm and a material physical realm was a total illusion, that everything is energy. The whole thing, there is no matter in this world. And to summarize what the meaning was, a famous physicist in 1930 by the name of Sir James Jeans said, we have been led to believe that the universe is a great machine, when in fact it is more a great thought. And the reality about that was quantum physicists have established since 1925 that consciousness is the primary mechanism of creativity of the world that we experience. In fact, a more recent article in the journal Nature, which is like a scientific mainstream journal, was an article by a quantum physicist at Johns Hopkins University by the name of Richard Henry. And his article was entitled The Mental Universe. I know the last two lines in the article because they were like so powerful. And here's what the conclusion of the article was. The universe is immaterial. It's mental and spiritual. Live and enjoy. And this is so exciting because science is coming out saying it mental and spiritual. It's like, oh my God. But that's the quantum physics part. And the reality about it, why is that so important, as Sadhvijay had just mentioned, it's our thoughts that are manifesting this world. Now you could say that's a spiritual thing, and now I say not only is it spiritual, now it is fundamental basic science of the universe. And it says then the thoughts are creative. Well, if the thoughts are creative, then who is having the thought? And you start to realize, I'm having the thought. Well, then the truth is simple, as Richard Henry said, you are creating this world with your mental activity and your spirituality combined. And then all of a sudden it says, well, then if I'm creating the world, then my original belief that when things didn't go right, I was a victim. The universe wasn't supporting me. It's like, oh, I try so hard and the universe is not giving me things. It turns 180 degrees around. And it basically says this, we are creating this world. And then I say, your mind is creating this world. I was looking for relationships. I kept failing at them, okay? I end up in the Caribbean teaching at a medical school. The universe throws this into my lap. The perfect pickup line in the whole world is sort of like, hey, if you're not doing anything, you want to come and stay in my villa in the Caribbean and hang out? I have a villa on the beach and I got my own place and blah, blah, blah. And I still wasn't able to find anybody. But I kept looking because I said, I need a relationship. I need a relationship. So I meet this woman who comes off of some yacht and she's, got a future that's like she'll do what she wants. And I thought, well, if you're not doing anything, why don't you want to come and stay with me in my villa on this beautiful island? She looked at me and then she said, I can't be with you. And I sort of like stopped for a moment. And she looked at me and she said, you're too needy. And all of a sudden it hit me. I said, oh my God. What am I looking for? A relationship. Why? Because you're not happy. So if you're looking for a relationship because you're not happy, then you're depending on that relationship to make you happy. So that's not a nice relationship. It's codependency. If I give you this place to stay, you will make me happy. That's a trade. It's like,
yes.
And after she said that, I was stunned for a moment. I can't be with you. You're too needy, she said. And I was stunned. And then all of a sudden I said, thank you. Thank you very much. It was sort of a slap in the face, right?
Like a blessing in disguise, right?
It totally was. It was like, wake up. And I walked away from that. And I looked at my life and said, you got this most amazing job. You teach a couple days a week. You live in the Caribbean. You got a villa. You got money in your pocket because you get paid and there's nothing to buy in the Caribbean anyways. I say, you're healthy. You got money. You got a great place to live. You have the most wonderful job. I go, you can't be happy with that? That's what I said to myself. I said, how can I, I'm looking for this person to make me happy. I said, oh, no, first I make me happy.
Yeah.
And then when I make me happy, that changed, and it did. What happened is I stopped bitching and started to enjoy. Look, don't you love where you live? Yeah, I love where I live. Do you love the sea? Oh, I love the sea. You like it? Oh, I love my job. And all of a sudden I started focusing on, hey, these are things I love. And guess what? I didn't need anybody.
That's when you created abundance, and that's when people became attracted to you, right?
100%, because once I didn't need them, I wasn't like, come here. I was like, I don't care.
It's fascinating how it works.
Then they showed up. They showed up because I did not need. That was the word. Because need puts pressure on that other person that they have to provide. And then they didn't have to provide. It was like, hey, let me hang out with you. I don't have to provide anything. I could just be me. I go, yeah, you be you, I be me. We have a great time. And that was the beginning of reprogramming a need for a relationship until I was happy with myself. And until that, once I was happy with myself and I didn't need a relationship, you should have seen how many opportunities showed up that were never there in my life before because the need part pushed them away. Money is the equivalent of energy. So you can buy energy with your cash. And the significance about that is if you're frugal and take care of your money and keep a balance, then you always have this energy in your bank account, energy in which you can live. However, obviously, if you waste this energy, then you actually interfere with your own survival. So you don't really want to go out and just throw away your money. And so basically, I really want to show you that this is an important insight into the nature of our own health and our biology and the world we create in this regard. That our biological system, the cells, rely on energy. Without energy, there's no life. So fundamentally, you have an energy budget that gives you life. And in fact, in the body, energy is in coins called ATP, molecules that represent units of energy. So in fact, biologists refer to ATP as the coin of the realm. The significance of ATP is this, is that ATP molecules are like units of gasoline, like gallon of gas, that are used to fuel our biological processes. So to stay alive, we have to have all this ATP. So there's an ATP account in your body right now. But the question is, how do you use this ATP? And now here's an important fact, that 25% of the total energy in your whole body is used to operate your brain. So all of a sudden you start to recognize that the brain uses energy at the rate of muscles of a marathon runner. So brain and muscle activity are pretty much the same. And so why is this important? Because as you're using your brain, as you're using your thinking, you are actually using energy. Now, why is this relevant? And the answer is very simply this. Because the way we've been using our thoughts are not necessarily productive. As a matter of fact, sometimes our investments of our thoughts are actually counterproductive because our thoughts create a reality that we then have to overcome. So basically it says that we must start to become aware of our thoughts. And why is this important? Because thoughts represent units of energy. Every time you have a thought, you use energy. Why this becomes relevant is, if I give you a checkbook for your bank account, you don't go down the street and just write checks to people like, oh, hey, you're a nice looking guy. Here's $10 for you. And oh, here, little girl, go out and buy yourself a little car. Here's $1,000 for you. And you don't give away your money. Why? Because giving away your money is giving away your life. So basically, you become very frugal when you have a checkbook in your hand. Now, what I'm trying to tell you is this. You have an energy budget in your body. The energy is what keeps you alive. When you start using energy and writing checks where you get no return from your energy, then it's exactly the same as writing checks out of your bank checkbook and giving away your cash. So why this becomes important is the biology of belief reveals how our thoughts create our reality. And if you start investing in thoughts that are counterproductive, thoughts like fear, or what am I going to do, and how am I going to escape this problem, or how's this going to go wrong, and all these other kinds of thoughts that are negative kinds of thoughts, then realize this. You are actually not just using your energy for having these thoughts, but these thoughts are also what come into your reality. What you focus on with your thoughts, your brain will manifest as reality. I was cloning stem cells back in 1967, 40 years ago. And the significance was, while I was doing this research, I was also teaching medical students. So I was teaching medical students the foundation of how cells work, the conventional story out of the textbook, genes control life, what we call the genetic determinism, the belief that genes control your traits, behavior, your physical characteristics, etc. And what my research revealed when I was studying the stem cells was this, very profound. I put one stem cell in a petri dish all by itself, and it would divide every 10 to 12 hours. So it'd be 2, 4, 8, 16 cells, 32 cells. After about 2 weeks, I have thousands of cells in the petri dish, but what was unique, they were all genetically identical. But then I did the experiment. The experiment was to take some cells out of the dish and put them into a separate dish with a different environment.
Okay.
And so the environment is a culture medium, but the culture medium to cells is like the world that we live in. It's got the air, the water, the food, all the things in it. So I take the cells out of my stem cell dish, put them in a separate dish with a different environment, and the cells form muscle. But then I went back to the same dish with genetically identical cells in it and took some cells out and put them in a different environment, and they form bone. And then I went back to the same dish with genetically identical cells and put them in a third petri dish with a different environment, and they formed fat cells. And there I was confronted with this reality. All the cells are genetically identical, but they had different fate, fat, muscle, bone. I said, simple question, what controls the fate of cells? And the answer is the environment. It was the only thing that was different because they were all genetically identical. So I started to really say, oh my goodness, here I am teaching genes control life to the medical students. And yet the cells were revealing to me that, hey, they all had the same genes, but it was the environment that I put them in. And so the environment controlled their life. And a very simple experiment that is very profound for us today is if I took my dish with plastic petri dish with cells in it and moved it from a healthy environment to a less than healthy environment, the cells get sick. And if I were a doctor of cells, you might say, well, what kind of drugs would you give these cells? And it turns out, no, you don't give the cells any drugs. You just take the dish from the bad environment, put it back into a good environment, and the cells will innately, naturally come back to health again. Well, how do you change the subconscious mind? I say, how did it learn in the first place? I say, what was the first one? I say, theta, 7 years. Brain was functioning lower vibration than consciousness. You have to slow down the brain to a much slower vibration. Then it goes into the subconscious mind. That's why hypnotherapists in the old days, they had a watch and they would swing it back and forth. So the watch would swing and they would tell the person, you're getting sleepy, you're getting tired. And the reason they say that is because that shuts down the conscious vibration. And the next vibration is theta, which is hypnosis. So to get you into hypnosis, first I have to get your conscious brain to stop. Mm-hmm. And then in hypnosis state theta, the vibration theta, then whatever is coming from the outside is not going into my conscious mind. Whatever I see on the outside is going into my subconscious program. So if you want to change the subconscious, you have to talk to the subconscious. I go, how do you do that? Well, number one, hypnosis. And I go, oh, well, I need to see the hypnotherapist? I go, no, this is the cool part. Mm-hmm. I say, why? I said, we have different vibrations. The lowest vibration is delta, is sleep. The next higher vibration is theta, hypnosis, imagination. The next higher vibration is alpha, calm consciousness. And the next higher vibration is called beta, which is like schoolroom, like what we're doing here, consciousness, okay? I go, so why is it relevant? I say, when you're asleep, you're at the lowest. And when you start to wake up, you go up first to theta. And that's like in the morning where you're half awake and half asleep. And then I say, but then when you're awake, you're in alpha. Now you're in consciousness. And then when you go to work, you're in beta, which is like the working consciousness. But when you come home, it reverses. So I come home from work, I'm in beta, but I relax. Oh, the consciousness vibration slows down to alpha. And here's the fact. The moment that the vibrations get a little lower than alpha, consciousness is now shut off for the night. You're sleeping. Yeah, but there's a period of time after alpha shuts off before it reaches delta, the lowest one. There's a period of time of theta. I go, why is it relevant? I said, you put earphones on. And the moment, and you play a program of what? Of what you want. A self-help program of make a relationship, be healthy, do a job, whatever. You get the program, self-help program. I say, you put it on a CD player, let's say, and you put the earphones on. And while you're still awake, just before you go to sleep, you can hear what's going on. But the moment you fall asleep, conscious mind shut off, but guess what? Theta is on.
The work is getting done, right?
Right, it's good. You're getting a self-hypnosis with the earphone. So you didn't hear it, you were sleeping. The subconscious mind was hearing it. And when you repeat that, that's how you put a new program in. So that's number one, self-hypnosis. The science that says there are two minds that are operating at the same time. One is called the conscious mind and one is called the subconscious mind. I say, what's the difference? The conscious mind is where you are as a spirit, an entity, a unique identity. You are in that conscious mind and perceiving the world. I say, what about the subconscious mind? It's not a creative mind. The subconscious mind is habits, things that you've learned and you've experienced in your life, and they become habits. So the subconscious mind is not thinking, creating. The subconscious mind, push the button, play the behavior. So here's the point. When we are in our conscious mind, we are connecting our spirituality to the biology and the physical planet that we're in. And that is the creative mind. That's the one you wake up in the morning and say, oh, I wish I had this and I desire that and these are the things I want. And then you go out and start the day, and then guess what? 95% of the day, you are not operating from the conscious mind. Science has recognized 95% of the day, because we are thinking 95% of the day, our behavior is now controlled by the subconscious mind. I go, okay, so what's the difference? And the final conclusion of this is the conscious mind with your creativity has your wishes and your desires. The subconscious mind was programmed by other people. Your mother, your father, your siblings, and your community. So what is the difference? You wake up with a wish and a desire of what you want, and then the rest of the day, you play the programs that you got from other people that don't answer your wishes and don't support your desires, and all you see is the consequence of it and go, oh my God, why is it not working? And the answer is because you don't see, because remember the name is subconscious, below conscious. So when that behavior is playing, psychologists will tell us 70% or more of the programs in the subconscious are disempowering, self-sabotaging, and limiting behaviors. So the simple reality is this. We have great wishes and desires, and yet our life is not controlled by that. Our life is controlled by the programming, and that programming is the disempowering program. So all you see is the consequence of the invisible subconscious, which will sabotage all the desires and wishes you have. And then to conclude that, what if you just didn't default to the subconscious? What if you just stayed in the conscious mind? That's called being mindful. And why is it relevant? Because when you stay conscious, keep your mind present, you are the creator of your life. And when people are in mindfulness, they manifest their wishes, their desires, and their happiness. So for all of us, it's sort of a wake-up call. You think you're running your life with your wishes and desires? It's an illusion. You're really running your life with your programs acquired from other people.
Many people may think, well, hold on a second, so I can take 5 minutes and I can totally change my life, and that's all I need. And I think
that's a really wonderful possibility, but the probability is this: are you going to hit the right statement? That is the one that you need to change your life. Okay, let's say someone's overweight, and they say in their mind, "I am, a weight, a number they like. I am 125 pounds," and you're not. And I say, so I want to change my weight, and I put a program in, I'm going to lose weight. And I go, well, wait, that extra poundage, that might be due to protection. I go, what do you mean? I say, if I, as a young person, was abused, then the consciousness is, if I'm a heavy person, they won't bother me anymore. And so the weight isn't due to just eating food. The weight was actually due to I'm safer being heavy than I am. I say, well, if you want to change your weight, you can talk about the weight all you want, but until you adjust the problem from the fear, that I'm going to be abused, that's where the problem came from. It didn't come from eating food over here. So I say, well, you can change beliefs. Sometimes I like to give a visual. As a matter of fact, I visualize a big spider web, which has like circles and then lines coming out, like a web, okay? And so there are links as you go around. There's also anchors where the web is anchored at a couple of places. And I go, each belief is like a link in that spider web. And you can do one link and another link and another link. That really change the spider web. But if you do a belief that is an anchor, and you change the anchor belief, and that anchor lets go, the web will collapse.
That's powerful.
So what's the point? And the point is this: sometimes a belief statement knocks out a link, but when you really hit it just right, you knock out a support. And when you knock out a major support, the whole web collapses instead of just a link at a time, which could take it down, but it's much harder that way.
We all have approximately 50 trillion cells in our body, and these cells are all self-sufficient. They have their own memory, they have their own immune system, and in fact, you also go on to say that for 2.75 billion years, there was only one-celled organisms alive on the planet.
Yeah, and the nature is, as the single cell evolved to be the most intelligent it could be, it ran into a physical limitation because intelligence is physically tied up with the membrane or skin of the cell. You can only have so much membrane. So evolution apparently stopped. It was like 2.5 billion years, just a single cell organism. Then it said, well, how can you have more evolution? The answer is cells decided to come together in community, because when cells come into community, they share awareness. So there's more awareness with 10 cells than there is with one cell. And there's more awareness with 1 million or 1 billion or 1 trillion. So when you look at a human being, while we see ourselves as single entities, the truth is we are made out of 50 trillion amoeba-like cells. And so our body is this giant community. And what makes it very exciting, as you mentioned, is, well, in my own work with cloning cells, I can take a cell out of your body and it could live outside of you. Why? It has its own intelligence. It has essentially every function in your body is present in a cell. So my 7-year-old vision manifests to be true when I got older, to realize cells are miniature people. And then you say, well, what about happens in the human body? And I go, this is where the issue comes in, is because you have 50 trillion cells living in community, but your mind is the government. When a government works in harmony with the people, then the people thrive and the community is in good health and grows. But when a government is not really supportive or not working in harmony with a community, then a government can cause the nature of that community to fall apart or even lead to the end of the community. Well, that's what we're finding out. Our mind is the government. And when we entertain harmony and the right living in balance with nature and with each other, then we provide our 50 trillion cells with very life-supporting information and chemistry.
So harmony means giving the body good food,
Yes.
not being stressed out,
Absolutely.
living in a happy environment.
Yes. Basically, it says, as I said, when I had my petri dish of cells, if I put it from a healthy environment to a bad environment, the cells got sick. But you didn't have to give them drugs. But all you did is take the dish from the bad environment and put it in a good environment. And the joke, which I like to tell people, is, well, this happens in a plastic petri dish, but guess what? We are skin-covered petri dishes. Underneath our skin is 50 trillion cells living in a dish, and the culture medium is the blood. And so when I change the culture medium in a plastic dish, I change the fate of the cells. And I say, well, then what controls the culture medium? My blood, the chemistry. And the answer is, my thoughts influence my brain, and the brain releases chemistry that matches my thoughts. So when I'm in stress or I'm afraid of the world, I release different chemistry into the blood than if I open up my eyes and I find myself in love. I release completely different chemistry. And it's like, well, all I have to ask an individual is, how do you feel when you're in total love, or how do you feel when you're in fear? And the answer is, well, I feel totally different. And guess what? All the cells are bathed in that chemistry. And so the feeling of love produces totally different chemistry in the blood, chemistry that supports growth and healing of the body and supports the immune system. And in contrast, when we perceive reasons to be afraid and we release stress hormones into our body, we actually shut off the growth mechanisms and the immune system to save the energy. Why? Because if you believe you're going to have to run from that lion, you want all the energy available to run from a lion. So when a person is in stress, they allocate their energy reserves for fight or flight, but take it at the expense of the health of the system, the immune part of the system. And so the more stress you're under, the more bad chemistry, in a sense, of not supporting you that you experience. And it was a very important point. In our evolution, stress or fear was not the mainstay of life. The mainstay of life was to be happy and live in the harmony of the environment. Every now and then a saber-toothed tiger would come. Okay, now it's time to be stressed out. Now it's time to run. But the point is, once you escape from the saber-toothed tiger, in the old days, then it's like, oh, back to health and harmony. And I say, well, what about today's world? Today's world is 24/7 run from the tiger. And this is not biologically sustainable, because the chemistry of protection contrasts with the chemistry of growth. In our mind, we start to realize that we're concerned, we're afraid, we don't have enough, I'm not safe, I'm not secure. And I say, oh, these thoughts, I was talking about the thoughts in your mind, go in and control your biology, your genetics, your physiology, and your health. And I go, yes, this is really true. I say, well, how can I tell you what your thoughts are, in a sense that can I read your thoughts? And I say, yes, you know, I could put wires on your head, and it's called electroencephalograph, and I could read your brain activity. And I go, oh, great, I can see this brain activity. I want to tell you something that's profoundly important. We were programmed to believe that our thoughts are contained in our head. That if I have a thought, it's just for me, not for anybody else. It's inside, and it's working through me. And now I want to tell you about a new technology. It's not electroencephalograph. It's called magnetoencephalograph. I say, what's unique about that? I say, it reads your brain. I say, yeah, but so does EEG. I say, yeah, but EEG, you put the wires on the head, and you get the electrical activity conducted through the skin from the brain, and that's what I'm reading. And I say, what's different about MEG? The probe is out here. And I said, what does that mean? Your thoughts are not contained in your head. Your thoughts are broadcast to the field just like a radio broadcast. I said, well, what if I, as an individual, have a thought that says, let's have peace in the world? And I broadcast out there in the street and I say, let's have peace. And I look around, it's like, where's the peace? I don't see the peace. And here's what the relevance is. Each of us is broadcasting. If you get enough people to have the same thought, that broadcast is amplified. Each of us has a small power, but if you put 1,000 people with the same thought, 10,000, 100,000 people with the same thought, you are broadcasting a most powerful thought, not just in your body, but out in the field. I say your energy is in the field, the thought is in the field. And you go, well, what does that mean? And then I'll give you this most wonderful quote. I used it the other day in a lecture from Albert Einstein. And the quote is so important. Here's the quote. The field, so a definition, the field is the invisible energy. Right now you're in a field, there's cell phone broadcasts, television, radio broadcasts, all kinds of information coming across. But guess what? Each one of you is a broadcast in that field. The quote, the field is the sole governing agency of the particle. Particle is the material realm. So what was Einstein saying? It's the energy in the field that shapes the physical experience of our lives. And if enough of us collectively have an energy that's coherent and strong, and we broadcast the belief, we change the world. I just want you to recognize, as much as I wanted peace in the world, if not enough people are out there saying, let's have peace in the world, there is no peace. If I want to say, let's have a war, how can you have a war? You have to have enough people convinced that the war is going to benefit them so that their broadcasts say, yes, let's have a war because I and my colleagues, we're all going to have a better result from that. And the reality is this. The only things that change on this planet collectively are when we collectively share thoughts. And yoga, when you're in your postures, when you're in your process, your mind is sharing a thought, not just in your head, but all around you. So the whole idea about this is we have to recognize we are collectively creating reality with our thoughts. And if we want to change reality, it can change instantly. The moment we become coherent, the moment we collectively are on the same platform of thinking. You get enough people to say peace, there will be peace instantly in this world. But we've been programmed by other people to give them the power to tell us what we need. And as Sadhviji has been telling us so importantly, what we need is not what they tell us, what we need is what we know. And I really hope that you understand this, because when you have your thoughts, recognize it's not contained in your head, your thoughts out in the field. And that thought, the field, is the sole governing agency of matter. And therefore, what this world is looking for at this moment is an evolution. It's not an evolution of our biology. Our biology is already evolved. It's an evolution of our consciousness. When we collectively as a population say enough is enough, it will end. Jesus told his followers, all the miracles that I can do, you can do them, but even better than I can, and you don't believe it. And that was the whole damn thing in a nutshell. If you don't believe it, you can't do it. And I said, well, where's belief come from? Mind. I say, and then what if you've been programmed you can't do it? And I said, then you'll never be able to do it. And this is the problem. And so we talked about way number one. You want to change it? Mm-hmm. Hypnosis, because that's the original way things went in the first place. And that what you said was true. Even you just say, I feel amazing, I feel amazing. If you repeat that, the mind will all of a sudden change how you feel. That's how it does it, okay? So I say, number one, self-hypnosis. Number two, after age 7, you still learn how to do new things that become habits. Like you didn't learn how to drive a car until later than 7. But once you know how to drive a car, remember the first day you got in, it was like, oh my God, looking out the windows, checking the mirror, watching the gauges, keeping your feet on the pedals just correctly, looking, paying all these attentions like, and I say, today you've been driving for a while. You don't even think about that. You get in the car, you put the key in, and now what are you thinking about? Well, what am I going to do when I get to the store? Mm-hmm. You're not even thinking about driving. Why? It's a habit. Okay. I say, well, how'd you get that habit? Because you're older than 7. How'd you get it? I say, repetition. That's what makes a habit. practice. You want to play an instrument? I'll hand you an instrument. Yeah, you didn't have any practice, then you're not going to be able to play it. And I say, oh, practice. I say, what is that? Repetition. That's the second way the subconscious learns. Repeating something over and over and over again, because that's called habituation, making a habit. And I love it. The new age today thing is fake it till you make it. I go, what the hell is that? I say, you're not happy. Yeah, most of us have trouble being happy. And I say, but what if every day, all day long, and you can remember, you say, I am happy. In spite of the fact that what the hell is going on, you just say, I am happy. I am happy. I am happy. I go, why? What's going on? I say, repetition. And there'll be a point where you'll repeat it to the degree that the subconscious, which learns by repetition, will put in, I am happy. I say, then what's the consequence? I say, what's the function of the mind? Take that program and manifest it. Now that it's in there, I am happy. I wake up one morning and guess what? I don't have to say I'm happy. It's automatic. I'm already happy all day long. Why? My program said that. 95% is coming from that. Mm-hmm. Habituation, repetition of the exact thing you want, not future vision, as if you have it now. We'll put it in a program. So that's first 7 years hypnosis. After 7 years, repetition, habituation is how you change it. A sticky note, people put that stuff on a mirror or someplace and they go, oh yeah, the little sticky note. And I go, that is not repetition. That's a suggestion. A repetition is a practice. You have to repeat things. You practice an instrument, you practice driving a car, you practice doing these things, and then it became real. Okay, so the first two things are hypnosis. Second thing is repetition. And thirdly, the most, effective is called energy psychology. And I go, what's energy psychology? And I go, it's called super learning. I go, so what the hell is super learning? I go, maybe you've seen somebody read a book by picking up a book and just moving their finger down the page, just like that, just as fast as that. And guess what? The subconscious mind, the supercomputer that it is, has read every word just by moving your finger down that, has read every word on that page. And a person using this super learning technique can go into a bookstore, open up a book, and 5 minutes later, by thumbing through each page, turn the page, turn the page, turn the page, they can read a whole book in 5 minutes. That's super learning. I say, if you can engage that function, you can also use super learning to create new programs, not in days or weeks, but you can create a new program in minutes. It's like, I go, absolutely. And it's so important. Why? Because there's an old phrase that's really critical. It's called necessity is the mother of invention. Mm-hmm. And I say, what's happening? We're facing a mass extinction due to human behavior that is compromising the web of life. Humans are creating this through our behavior, our culture. I say, you want to survive this whole, extinction event? Well, then you have to create something different. You have to change behavior. The thinking is not that much in our control. The brain is operating, as I said, 95% from the subconscious.
But how did you actually then get results in a relatively short space of time?
Well, the first thing, how does the subconscious learn? And that's a very critical thing. The conscious mind can learn from reading a book. So the subconscious mind can read a self-help book and you go, wow, that sounds really great. And then you find you read the book, but your life is still the same. And it turns out, why? And the answer is because the subconscious mind is more of a habit mind, things that you repeat over and over again. Yes. Yeah. So the reality is, if you can stay conscious, be present, and when those negative thoughts come in our head, and psychologists tell us 70% of the time, the thoughts that are going through our head are negative and redundant, so the same negative thoughts are going through. If you could stop those thoughts, if you could hear them as they come through, like, oh, that's not going to work, or this will never happen, those kind of thoughts. If you can hear them and stop them consciously, say, no, change the belief right there, just give the more positive thing. As you repeat this more frequently and you keep repeating it, the subconscious mind begins to learn. So as a habit, if you stay conscious, and you have to work at it, and here's why people say, well, how come only 5% from conscious mind, 95% from subconscious? Because the conscious mind can think into the future and think into the past and solve problems. Then think about it yourself. Most of the time, you're thinking about something. Well, if you're thinking, you're using the conscious mind. Well, if you're using the conscious mind for thinking, then who's running the show? And the answer is, when you're not paying attention and you're thinking about what I'm going to do tomorrow, your subconscious is running the show. I was a scientist, And as a scientist, we don't bring spirituality and mind into the story. It's all genes and cells and molecules and all that. And my research on stem cells revealed that while I was teaching in medical school that genes control life, my research revealed that it was the environment in which the cells lived that controlled the cells. It was outside information coming into the cells. And I remember how specifically, in a moment of time, that I was working on trying to understand the mechanics from a molecular point of view. How does an environmental signal control biology? And I was working not on the genes, I was working on the skin of the cell, the membrane. And it was so profound, it's hard for me to even describe it. I'm working on the understanding, how does information from the environment control biology? And I had looked at the membrane for years, and I wrote a new definition of the mechanism of the membrane. And I wrote this definition, and this is in 1985. It was about 2 a.m., and I wrote down the membrane is a liquid crystal semiconductor with gates and channels. When I wrote that down, there was a pause, and I said, I read something exactly like that. And right next to my first computer, Macintosh, was a book from a simple book of understanding your microprocessor. And I opened it up and I said somewhere, and I opened it right in the introduction. It said, a chip is a crystal semiconductor with gates and channels. And I thought, oh, what a coincidence. They have the same definition. And then in a couple of seconds, I started to say, wait a minute. One for one, the parts are exactly the same. I said, oh my God, the membrane is a computer chip. And on the surface of the cell are like keys, like on a typewriter. And I started to realize, oh my goodness, the environment is typing on the surface of the cell information that went into the cell and control the genetics and the behavior. And it was like, oh, this is really exciting. And I'm typing on my own computer, typing this information in. And then I realized I am outside of the computer, typing on the keyboard, and the information is coming up on the computer. And then I said, oh my God, this keyboard on the surface of your cells has a number of keys that represent a PIN number, a personal identification number, and no two of you have the same keys on that. Each of us have a different PIN number to get into our own cells. It's our personal identity, and these are the keys. And I realized, oh my God, well, we've been focusing on these, what are called receptors, as the source of identity. I realized, no, it's what's activating, what's typing is the identity. And then it hit me and said, oh my God, my identity is not in the cell. My identity is a signal coming from the environment, typing on the keyboard. And then I said, oh. And the first thing that hit me was, I can't die. I'm not even in here. And that instant, the fear, which all of us have in our deepest bottom belief system, is a fear of our mortality. And when that moment of like, I can't die, not as a devotional belief, it had nothing to do with that, it was just a mechanism, I said, oh my God, I can't die. I'll tell you, the same thing happened with Savaji as me. Tears started rolling down my face, and this joy was an ache in my heart that I've never experienced before. I spent 40 years in my head. That's how I became an academician and a research scientist. And when this moment hit, it was my heart that blew open. I refer to it as a heart orgasm. And, and that was the first time I experienced my heart as an essential part of my own conscious existence. And what happened was, I was overwhelmed, first with the fact that I was not spiritual at 1:59 a.m., and at 2 a.m., I was 100% spiritual. You have a very close friend. You know your friend's behavior. And you happen to know your friend's parent. And at some point you see that your friend shares the same behavior as their parent. So you casually volunteer, you go, Bill, you're just like your dad. And that's when you have to back away from Bill, because Bill's the first guy that says, how can you compare me to my dad? And everyone laughs because they're familiar, but I say, no, there's two very profound points from that one story, and profound point number one. Everybody else can see that Bill behaves like his dad. He got his programming from his dad. It's only Bill who doesn't see it. Yeah. And profound point number two, we're all Bill, because all of us got programming, and all of us operate with these programs, and we don't even see we're doing it, that we even, when told we're doing it, will deny that we do these behaviors because we don't even see when we're doing it. That's why it's called subconscious, below conscious. When I first started talking about it, it was from an academic conscious point of view. This is what I learned, but my subconscious programs were still exactly the same. So while I had this wonderful knowledge, my life still wasn't anything I wanted to brag about it, because it wasn't. And as you know, that old game, well, who would you like to be? And I could think of anybody I'd rather be than me. And yet, when I started to apply the new science and rewrite the subconscious so it supported me rather than the programs of limitation or disempowerment that we get from our parents and our community as children, which almost all of us get, when I put in the new programs, all of a sudden I started to find, my goodness, my life completely turned around. All wonderful things started happening in my life. I was healthier. I haven't been to a doctor in 20 years. I don't need that. I don't take any of their drugs. Why? Because most of the illness is just from the stress of not living in harmony. And when you learn to get rid of the limiting programs that we got as children and put in programs that support you, guess what? Then all of a sudden, the place turns into heaven. And it's interesting, I tell people, well, you create your own life, and then they look around and go, I don't want responsibility for this, but I say, well, you didn't know you were creating with these unconscious beliefs. And yet then I tell people, especially people that have fallen in love, and people have fallen head over heels in love. I said, go back to that time when you first fell in love. Let me ask you a question. Were you healthy? And oh yeah, I was healthy as anything. I said, did you have energy? I said, oh, I had so much energy, made love for days in a row without even eating. And I go, yeah. And I go, and how was life for you? It was so exciting. I couldn't wait for the next day. So I said, in this little period that that I refer to as a honeymoon, I say, wasn't life like heaven on earth? And they go, well, yeah. And I go, that was not an accident. That was an actual creation. And you say, but what was different that made life so heaven on earth during love? And the answer is because you become very self-conscious of yourself. You don't rely on the habits. The day before you meet this person, you're going to go on a date. I say, especially to women, I say, how long did it take you to get dressed? And they say, well, it was 15 minutes and I was out of the house. And then I say, now, tonight, you're going to go on a date with this person who has just rocked your world. And I say, how long did it take you to get dressed? It's like, my God, it may take an hour or two. And I say, yesterday, 15 minutes, today, an hour or two. What's the difference? Yesterday, I got dressed by habit, because I get dressed every day. Yeah. But tonight, I am looking in the mirror, meaning I am self-conscious. I am making sure that I represent myself to be the best individual I can be. And when both parties are not relying on the habit, and both of them are saying, I'm creating the best I can be, they're living in the moment of the now, they're being very mindful, they're being very present, and guess what? Heaven on earth is created. The cells in your body are covered up by the skin, disconnected from the environment. But in order to survive, these cells have to adjust their genetics and their behavior to adapt and maintain their survival in a changing environment. So the question is, then how do the cells inside your body actually know what's going on in the real world, because they're not connected to it? I go, this is the role of the nervous system. The nervous system's job is to read environmental signals and then relay those signals into the cell. So as illustrated right here, we are getting signals from two different environments in our body. Signals from within our body as well as signals from without our body, and the function of the nervous system is to read both of these environments. The relevance is the nervous system reads the information in the environment and then translates it into signals that are sent to the 50 trillion cells inside your body to alert them to what is going on in that world. So, in fact, that is a true statement. The environment is controlling the behavior of your cells. But the mind does an interpretation of those signals based on our life experiences. Now, for a lot of people, this seems difficult, but let's put it in a different context because we can talk about computers. There's a very interesting fact about our brain as a computer because it has an autocorrect mechanism built into the subconscious. Meaning what? Well, I can have my conscious mind like typing on the computer about what's going on in the world. But if I type something, that signal can be translated and sent to the cells. But if I type something that the subconscious has no recognition of, it will do like an autocorrect and change what I wrote to fit something that it thinks that I wrote as a subconscious. So I put in love and subconscious changes that to live. That's a whole different meaning at this point because of misinterpretation. So the point is, your wishes and desires of your conscious mind are filtered by the programs in your subconscious mind. And if you have a wish or desire that doesn't conform to a program that already exists, then the subconscious mind's job is to retranslate that into something that makes sense for the subconscious belief, not for the conscious. So we may have wonderful wishes and desires, and if it doesn't conform to the programs that we receive, the subconscious will change those into something it understands. To make sense out of what I just said, consider using your cell phone. That you write something in your cell phone such as, let's put the word epigenetics in the cell phone. And I go, when I type epigenetics in, the database in the phone says, I don't know that word at all. And then what does it do? It throws up different options that could be closely related to epigenetics. And so the significance is, if I put something into my system that is not supported by the program, then the programming system will change whatever I did to accommodate what it believes is right. Now, the issue about this is, well, if I want to have epigenetics in my phone, then what I really have to do is open up my dictionary and add the word epigenetics. And now after that, anytime I write epigenetics, the phone mechanism will understand what I'm talking about. Well, going into the database and changing the program is the function of what energy psychology is all about. It says if your behavior is not conforming to your wishes and desires, then it will be necessary to go into your program and install new behaviors that you want to manifest. So now the brain will have a reflection or a resource of what you're talking about. So I really want to emphasize the nature of biology belief as different than the fact that just environment controls your genes. And I'll give you a very simple example of what I mean by that, by the fact that I can have two people in the very exact same environment, but each of these individuals has a totally different reaction to the environment. So if it was just environment that controlled your genes and your behavior, then both individuals should have exact same behavior. But the reality is no. The two people have different responses to the environment. I go, why? Same environment, but their minds have different interpretations. And it's the interpretation of the mind about that environment that is sent to the cells. So the important part is this. Yes, environment controls epigenetics. There's an external environment, but an internal environment. And yet recognize in humans, the internal environment is not a direct readout from the external world. It's an interpretation of that external world. And that's why each of us has a different response to the world in which we live. And that is why the biology of belief is an extension of the foundation that environment controls epigenetics. You want to change the world? We don't have to physically go out and physically change the world first. First, we have to change our belief about the world, our belief of who we are in the world. We're not victims, but we've been programmed to believe we're frail, vulnerable, that we're victims of the world. And the fact is, no, we are the most powerful beings and entities on this planet. We want to get out of the box? Think out of the box, and that will change all of it. As you understand the terms quantum physics and quantum mechanics, or Newtonian physics and Newtonian mechanics, what you see is that physics and mechanics are synonyms. So physics really means the mechanisms by which the universe operates. And the new physics, quantum physics, was something that I really wasn't into, nor were any of my colleagues in the medical school. We were all trained in Newtonian physics. And the difference between the two is very profound. Newtonian physics says the world that we live in, the universe we live in, is a machine made out of mechanical parts. If you want to understand how it works, take it apart, study the pieces, change the operation. That's the basis of medicine. We look at a human body, it's a machine made out of physical parts. When it's not working right, change the parts by buying chemicals and drugs. And that's the way that conventional medicine operates. When I started to read the quantum physics, I realized, oh my goodness, the whole foundation of the universe is not based on a mechanical, physical universe. It's based on the invisible energy called the field. So let's say if I hold a magnet right here in front of you, and you can see the magnet, but what you can't see is the invisible magnetic field. And so what it says is, well, we are physical things in our world, like physical bodies. We're immersed in fields, electromagnetic fields, magnetic fields itself, all kinds of fields like telephone, cell phone fields, television fields, radio fields, whole ranges. What is the difference between the Newtonian physics and quantum physics is this. Newtonian physics focus on the particles. Quantum physics says, you want to understand why the particles take this shape? Then you have to understand the field. It's the field that controls biology. It's the invisible forces. There's a great quote by Albert Einstein, and it's simple. It goes, the field is the sole governing agency of the particle. In other words, in the world of invisible things, fields, and particles, matter, it's the field that gives shape to the matter. And this is the basis of quantum physics. This becomes relevant. It says, okay, here's the physical particles of my body. Why are they in a healthy state, or why could they be in a sick state? That's the physical expression. And the answer is, well, to understand that, don't look at the body. You have to understand the invisible forces in the field. And it's fun, because if you think about it, when you were young, at some point you must have had like iron filings and sprinkled it around a magnet, and all of a sudden you saw the iron filings form that pattern of the magnetic field. Well, quantum physics would look at this pattern and try to explain how come all the iron filings fell in this pattern without recognizing that the field exists. In other words, can you explain why the iron filings have this shape if you don't recognize the magnetic field? And the answer is absolutely not. What's the nature of it? The body and its cells are like iron filings. Medicine is trying to understand the nature of the body by looking at the iron filings. And quantum physics says, if you don't understand that invisible field, you can't understand what's happening in the body. What we would see from a new understanding of evolution, which is a great extension beyond the Darwinian belief, which is quite limiting, okay, and quite troublesome, in fact. Because just think about what the principal Darwinian belief is, that evolution is based on a struggle for survival with a competition for fitness. So that says, oh my God, then our world is, we're all out there in a dog-eat-dog rat race trying to survive, because if you stop running, the person behind you is going to run over you. So if that's your way of life, then every day, by definition, you are living in a stress hormone body because of all the fears that we have. And yet evolution says, no, evolution is based on community and cooperation. A body has 50 trillion citizens. They live in harmony with each other. And it turns out that every human being, we're beginning to find out, is like a cell in a larger community called humanity. So in biological terms, the organism that's evolving on the planet is not the human being. We already did that. The organism that's evolving is the superorganism called human civilization. And right now, humans are fighting each other and killing each other. And if I say, well, what would that look like inside the body if the cells fight each other and kill each other? And I say, oh, well, that's called autoimmune disease, self-destruction. And autoimmune disease can kill you from the inside.
And that's on the increase, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, because our biological lives are complements to the environment.
Yeah.
The more stress and more violence on the outside, the more that's taken inside in biology and converted to disruption and disharmony of your own cellular internal community. If you can create a honeymoon for yourself while you're in love, and everyone started to create a honeymoon for themselves, then all of a sudden the concept of war and violence would disappear, because if everybody's in love and everybody's in harmony and everybody's so excited by being here, then the competition and violence that we live by because of today's beliefs would disappear. Because we've been so programmed to devalue ourselves and disempower ourselves, that we look at ourselves as victims and frail biological entities, ripe for bacteria to eat us up and all these other things. It's like, this is totally untrue. So the issue is we have to start from that belief and change these beliefs of who we are. We are profoundly powerful people. Look, you can walk across hot coals, a woman can lift a car off of an infant without thinking about it. Down south, the Baptist fundamentalists of the Pentecostal faith work themselves up in a Jesus state and drink strychnine in toxic doses to demonstrate that God protects them. They're not harmed by the strychnine. I mean, you can walk across fire, you can drink poison, you can lift thousands of pounds. Where's the frail image come from? And that's a belief. But the problem is if you believe you are frail, if you believe you are susceptible, if you believe you have a terminal illness, they manifest because that's called the nocebo effect. You as an identity are in your conscious mind. You actually are in there. That's where your personal identity is. And we have a tendency to say, if I talk to myself, I'm going to give myself a good talking to, and I'm going to change that subconscious. I say to myself, Bruce, don't do that again. Do this, don't do that again. And then I say, it's very frustrating. Why? You can talk until you're blue in the face, and nothing will change. I say, why? And the answer is, and this is the most important part, there is nobody in the subconscious. There's nothing there. It's a machine. It's a record playback device. So you can talk to the machine as much as you want. If you don't know how to push the record button, nothing's going to happen. So then I say, how do you change the program? I say, how did you get the program? The first 7 years, your brain was in theta, hypnosis. So I say, you want to change the program? Every night when you go to bed, just as your mind disconnects, just as you fall into sleep, your brain is now operating in theta. So if you put earphones on your head and you play a tape, a program, a CD of what you want, as your conscious mind disconnected, your subconscious is downloading. So you just play that tape as you go to bed, and after a number of playings, your subconscious will learn the new program without even your conscious being involved. That's number one. After age 7, how do we put a program in? Repetition. How did you do anything? You repeated it over and over again. How long did it take you to learn the alphabet? How many times did you have to go from A to Z before you could remember the whole alphabet? When you drove a car, you didn't know how to drive a car until you did what? You practiced. You repeated. So if you want to change a program, you put into your mind a repetition. And it's not... recognize this, what you want to change doesn't exist. So when you put in the new program, it'll sound strange. So let's say you are sick, you have a disease, and I say, what program do I want? I am healthy. I go, it doesn't sound right. I know I'm sick. I say, I don't care. There's a saying in English, fake it until you make it. What that means is, if you want to be happy, just keep in your mind, I am happy. I smile, even if you have to force a smile. I am happy, I'm smiling. I say, repeat this, and guess what? After a short time, it becomes a habit. And when you're in that habit, you don't even have to think, I am happy. The new habit will keep you happy all the time because that's the new program. Well, I probably don't have to tell you this if you've been watching TV, reading the newspaper, going online, or even looking out your window. The world is in a state of upheaval. Crises are all over the planet. Crises based on economics, politics, religion, race are upsetting the nature of civilization as we have known it. Well, this is not an accident. Actually, this is right on time. On time? Yes, we're facing an evolutionary upheaval. The significance is profound. Science has recognized that human behavior is precipitating the 6th mass extinction of life on this planet. 5 times in the history of this planet, life was thriving and some event wiped out from 70 to 95% of all life. The last time this happened, 66 million years ago, a comet hit the planet, upended the ecosystem, and the dinosaurs disappeared forever. Well, guess what? We are now in the sixth mass extinction. Human behavior is causing this. The way out is to change behavior. But to understand that, we need to understand that you are not a victim of your genes, not a victim of the world. As quantum physics emphasizes, consciousness is creating our life experiences. When I show up on September 27th in Copenhagen on Friday night, I'm going to provide a presentation to inform you of why this upheaval is occurring, the future of our evolution, and more importantly, how powerful you are in creating the character of the life you want. As quantum physics, the most valid science on this planet, acknowledges, consciousness is creating our life experiences. Well, my presentation will go deep into the nature of consciousness and how our mind controls our genes, controls the behavior that we have and the life that we express. And when you understand that you've been programmed and it's time for us to get out of this program to recognize how truly powerful you are, this is the opportunity to take charge of your life. And so what we need to understand is this: A, you are not a victim of your heredity because epigenetics, the new science, reveals that you are controlling your genetic and behavioral activity. And more so, we want to understand a very important fact. There's more to us than this physical body, that there's a field of energy with our identity, which is also recognized as a spirit. And if you recognize how powerful you really are and that you are more than this physical body, you will have the opportunity to take charge of your life and create the wishes and desires and aspirations that you seek.
So someone's not feeling well, they've got, I don't know, they've got the flu or
Yes.
they've got something wrong with their stomach or something. What should they practically do? They should presumably go to the doctor and get a diagnosis. Would you go along with that? I'm just trying to see where this goes in day-to-day life.
Well, I wouldn't say don't go to a doctor, but I say before you go to a doctor, just look around and think about this. What's going on in your life? Where the stress is coming from? Because it's almost your physiological expression is a complement to your life experiences. Those people that are happy are healthy. As I said, when you're in the honeymoon, you didn't get sick in the honeymoon. That's when you're absolutely healthy. But when you got caught back up into real life, that's when illnesses start to occur. So we always look at, oh, I must be sick. There must be something wrong with my biology. When it turns out, it didn't begin with your biology. Only about 2% of illness is actually connected to genetics, let's say. 98% of illness is not just genetics, it's environment. So when a person says, oh, I have the breast cancer gene, and people think, oh, I'm going to get breast cancer. And I say, well, wait. 50% of women that have the breast cancer gene get cancer. What about the 50% that have the gene and didn't get the cancer? And we never study that side. We only study the side that got the cancer. And you find out, well, what is it that the 50% do that don't have the cancer yet have the gene? What's different? The answer is their lifestyle is different. Their stresses, their fears, their concerns are not the same as the one that get the illness. The genes are like give you a propensity to get a disease, but that propensity is based on how you perceive life. And it's interesting, studies show that when children get adopted into a cancer family, the adopted child will get the cancer with the same percentage or probability as any of the natural sibling. And you say, but yeah, but the child came from totally different genetic stock. And the point is, yes, it wasn't the genes that promoted the cancer, it was the lifestyle that promoted the cancer, especially the lifestyle of stress. And then I say, well, if stress is causing lifestyle, I look around at the world and I go, my God, no wonder everybody's sick. Every day is filled with more stress than the day before. And if you buy into the stress, you take that disharmonious vibration, essentially, bring it into your life, and you end up with disharmony inside your body. Your life is a reflection of what you see. They did a recent study where they looked at some genes controlling inflammation. And then they read the genes of these people, and then the people went to 8 hours of meditation, and at the end of 8 hours, the genetic activity was completely changed. In other words, you can change the genes in just 8 hours of a meditation, and that means how powerful your thought is in controlling your biology. I don't want to say don't go to the doctor, so I'll go back just 20 years ago, the last time I went to a doctor.
Okay.
I went to a doctor because I had pneumonia. And I said to myself, well, yeah, I can see why. At that moment in my life, there was so much stress going on in my life that I could see I had opened my system up to that. But then I also realized, okay, well, I can, handle this with my consciousness. But then I realized the bacteria were doubling and they're growing faster than I can handle my consciousness. So I said, okay, now's the time for some penicillin. But the concept of it was, I don't rely on the penicillin, and all I had to say was, look, I get back on my feet and I go, it was my responsibility. And if I don't get into that same stressful situation again, then I won't have to go through this again. And it's been 20 years.
So it's intelligent learning, isn't it?
Yes. Don't discard the element of medicine until your consciousness gets high. And the fact is, when people have lower consciousness, because they're not strong enough in their consciousness to really manifest everything they want, they really need to take care of themselves more. Eat better nutrition, do more exercises, do these things to add to your health. But the surprising thing is, if you get more and more and more conscious, there's a point where you get so conscious, then you become like the person we refer to as Jesus, who does all these miracles. And what did Jesus say about the miracles? He said, you could do these better than I can do them, but you don't believe. And that is the absolute truth. Because when you fully have control of your consciousness, with that belief, you do create the miracles. The miracles of spontaneous remission, for example, a person terminally ill who all of a sudden says, I'm not buying this. I'm going to change my vision of life. And the moment they change their perception, they have what's called a spontaneous remission. Again, that would be called a miracle, but what was it? Taking full control of consciousness and manifesting a life of being fully conscious and present and seeing what brings harmony into your life and avoiding or eliminating as best you can any of the disharmony that exists on the outside, because disharmony will make disharmony inside. This is a truth, but if you really understand this truth, you have to change the way you are living. Because you're living by some materialistic, Darwinian, Newtonian, give me more matter, I'll be happier. And it's like, that has nothing to do with that at all. Because happiness is not an object. And so what's a revolution? Well, we've been programmed on materialism. Give me more matter. And it's like, no. Because what you get, I love it because we did Psyche training session, and there was this professional wrestler, and his persona in the ring is like a bad guy. So he has to dress up and do the acting and the wrestling. He's like, I'm the bad guy, and everybody would boo him. That was his job, to be booed, And he came to Psyche because he was really depressed by it. Why? Because his job is to be hated by people. It's like, well, that's not a great job. But so we said, well, what are you looking for? And he said, well, if I could maybe be an announcer for this, I could be an announcer. And then he said, okay, and you get to be an announcer, and what is that? What's that good for? Well, if I get to be an announcer, then maybe a network will pick me up, and then I could be a sportscaster. Oh yeah, and then what? He said, well, then I'll have some more money. And then what? So then I'm
buy more things.
Buy more things. That was it. Yes. Then I could buy some more, whatever he said. And then, and finally, we kept pushing to the last one. And it's like, and what do you get from getting this? And finally, after a litany, I'll be happy.
Happiness.
I'll be happy. So I remember Rob and I looked at him, and Rob says, well, you could be happy from day one. You didn't need to do any of this stuff to be happy.
Because even if he actually did do all of those things, even if you simply could say, well, that was a circuitous route, but at the end it did bring happiness, that would be different. But we know you go through this whole circuitous route,
don't pick it
and
up.
at the end you're still not happy.
No, that's what the rich people are. They got all this money, but they're not happy. And it's like, yeah, well, you could buy anything you want. It's like, yeah, but at some point buying is not happy. I was happy to have it. And I said, well, happy didn't have to be it. Happy could be happy. But people have been programmed to conform to a machine that requires them A, to work, and B, consume. work and consume, work and consume. And that will make this machine work like this.
I'm mad as heck, but I will take it anymore.
Joby. How many people go through the process, find it doesn't work, and then repeat the process and it doesn't work again? It's like, oh yeah, I've been married 4 times, somebody was saying. It's like, God, they repeated the same error already 3 times with the ideas. Do you think by the 4th time maybe you could learn that whatever pattern you played 3 times in a row will probably play itself again until you change, not your partner? You keep bringing in the same partner with different colored hair and a different name, but you brought that person in and you play the same game over again. The question is, can you learn? The answer is you can, but do many people learn? The answer is no, because they keep thinking that it's just my fate, that's just the way life is.
But their subconscious still remains unconscious.
That's the problem. Until you change the subconscious program, the subconscious is a habitual mind. It's habit. Yeah. Until you change the habit, you will replay the habit. That's why it's called a habit. So you keep replaying the same program. It's not, you keep, it's like a definition of insanity is the idea of keep doing the same thing and expect something different to happen. The fact is, no, that's insane. Why? You keep doing the same thing, you're going to get the same thing. And if the habit mind is giving us a story, then the answer says, well, how do I change it? And the answer is change the subconscious mind, because that's where the habits are that we got from other people. Again, this is most important. The fundamental habits in subconscious mind came from other people, and that's why they rarely match what you want in your conscious mind, which is you, and you create those programs, and yet the fundamental programs of subconscious were downloaded during that first 6 years of our development.
How do you rewire your brain?
Well, as we just said, the first thing you have to do is say, what the heck are my programs? You don't have to fix a program if it works. The only one you want to fix is the one that doesn't work. So then you say, well, what are the programs? And I can already tell you, the things that don't work in your life that you desire to have in your life, and you are creating an effort and a struggle and a lot of work to make it happen, the reason why it's not working is because somewhere in the program, it doesn't support that conclusion. So this program does not allow you to have this. So the thing is, well, as long as I have this program, I'm never going to get this. And even if I get it, it's going to disappear if as soon as I let go of the control, it's going to disappear because the subconscious take it away. So the first thing is identify, well, where are you having trouble? And I say, whatever that destination is, that the thing you were looking for, whether it was a job, health, relationship, whatever, if that's where you're having a trouble, recognize this. The program is counter to that. It's the opposite. The program is the opposite. That's why this can't stay here, because this is going to 95% of the day create a different program, not the one you wanted. So I say, so if I have a trouble relationship, then basically my program for a relationship doesn't work very well. In my case, that was true. For 50 years, I was operating from the program of relationship that I downloaded from my parents, who had a really sucky relationship. It was so bad. And I was just manifesting it unconsciously until I started to change. Once I changed, now I have heaven on earth. We came here to create. We came here to experience love. We have a sensory system. If it's not love, it takes us away from our creation. We came here to have the joy of what? Heaven on earth. And all of a sudden I say, earth is heaven. Earth is where you came to create. And then if you get misdirected in your creation, you can then create the world that we have. A world that doesn't look that good to me, and I go, so why is this all relevant? It's because we are truly powerful creators, and we have given up the belief that we have any power at all. I'm afraid of this, I'm afraid of that, and I'm going, well, there you go. Fear means close down. Growth is open. They're opposite. Growth is to be open and in love. Fear is to close down in protection. We cannot survive by closing down. Anything that closes down will die. And so we have to, it's the fear. And then I say, so what about Bruce? Because you might ask me that question. What stopped the fear in my life was I owned my spirituality as a scientific reality. I didn't go through a devotional phase, not spiritual, and then I had to learn a lot of stuff, and then I became spiritual. I was a biologist and saw I am not in here. I am a broadcast. And that moment of, I cannot die. You cannot die. You're not in there, but you have to not, like have a devotion to spirituality. It's either you believe spirituality or you don't believe it. And for me, it wasn't a devotion. It was a scientific mechanism. And the relevance was the moment I saw that, my life just like, boom. And what happened? I said, I lost fear. And if you're not in fear, no one can control you, because fear is what makes you give up the power to someone else.
Something you look at in spontaneous evolution too is how science and spirituality are coming together. They used to be very separate. There used to be
absolutely.
The scientific world, which was very factual driven, and that's that, and you couldn't change it. And spirituality was trying to open up things, but they really are meeting now, aren't they?
Yeah, it was interesting because the spiritual world of religion was talking about the invisible moving forces that shape the physical reality, and we call them spirit. And then science only came into existence because it made a detente with the church. In the very early days of science, it said, look, we won't tread on your invisible spiritual domain. We will just study the physical world. And when Newton was able to predict the movements of the planet by just looking at the physical features, then scientists got the idea as well. If you can understand how the universe operates by just studying the material world, we don't need that invisible stuff. But in 1925, Newtonian physics was incorporated, subsumed by a bigger physics called quantum physics. And quantum physics emphasizes the universe is made out of energy. It's not made out of matter. And then I say, well, what does the quantum physicists call this energy that the universe is made out of? I say, well, they call it the field. I say, what's the definition of the field? I love this. Invisible moving forces that influence the physical world. I go, my goodness, that's the same definition as spiritual that's used for spirit. I go, yes, quantum physics emphasizing the invisible field as primary to the physical world is essentially reiterating the statement of the spiritual people who talked about the invisible forces shaping our physical existence. And so, by definition, science, the new science of quantum physics, is bringing us back into alignment with the spiritual reality. Hopefully, the dogmatic beliefs of the church, which had talked about these wonderful terms but didn't allow us to live there, and science, which is still stuck in its material plane, will both divest themselves of their dogma and allow us to come together and recognize that we're all part of that invisible field, that we don't even live in our own bodies, if you understand the nature of how the cell works, that we are part of the field being downloaded into our body, that we're all, by definition, the field, or we're all spiritual, same definition. And if we recognize this, the unity of it, and that you cannot be taken out of the field, and you cannot be, in a sense, punished by the field, you are the field, then maybe the beliefs, those very restrictive beliefs from both science and from the dogmatic religion, will disappear, because the people owning their own spirituality, owning their own responsibility, and not saying, oh, it's spirits that did this or things, other factors, that we are the creators, will generate a new world. Because what I firmly believe is very simple. Go out and talk to the average person anywhere in the world and say, if you could create a world, what would you like? Well, I'd like a world where there's peace and harmony, and I'd like some food and a job. And I go, isn't it amazing how everywhere you go in the world, virtually the entire population has the same belief? And I go, then how come we don't have it? And the answer is because the leadership isn't exercising that belief. So I trust the people to take over the leadership of this world, and that the structure that is actually in a state of collapse. When it collapses, this will be our opportunity to evolve from the very destructive Darwinian perception of a world into a more holistic holism that says, we're all part of the same system. We're all cells in the same body. And when we work together, we will create magic on this earth like nothing has ever been seen before. So I'm very optimistic about that.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag Believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome. For 10 more amazing rules from Bruce Lipton, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
The power of positive thinking is people just think, oh, well, if I just have positive thoughts, then my life should be affected. And this is why positive thinking has a real bad rap in the public. And the reason is this: having a positive thought does not in any way